the immigrant detention facility, several Florida state lawmakers sued Governor Ron DeSantis and his director of the Florida Department of Emergency Management, Kevin Guthrie, who runs the site. In the lawsuit, the legislators say they have the legal right to have unannounced access to all the facilities recently built at the Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport, dubbed the Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center, adding that both DeSantis and Guthrie, quote, have exercised the governor's emergency powers beyond their authority. The Florida Division of Emergency Management agreed to host a tour of the facility today between 11 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, but only for Florida state legislators and members of Congress. Lawmakers like Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a Democrat, say they have heard from relatives of those detained, as well as immigrant rights groups, that the detainees are enduring things like bugs in their food, an infestation of mosquitoes, sleeping with the lights on, and not getting access to an attorney. This is what Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to say before trying to get access to this.
Well, welcome to jail. What did they think they were going to get in there? They're being detained. They're not in a hotel. This is not a vacation. This is what jail is. Mosquitoes, bugs, fences, gates, beds are not comfortable. If you got a pillow, you're doing good. I am trying to dig deep to understand what is it that the United States can do to make it good enough for the illegal immigrants. Why isn't the prison and the detention procedures that you guys are using on United States citizens and have been for several years that have been called inhumane? We never seen Debbie Wasserman Schultz go through a regular penitentiary uncovering all kind of infractions and human rights abuses and just uncleanliness. Oh, it's terrible in there. It's jail. It's not a good place. It's not going to be a good place. The government can't spend that kind of money and build hotels for people who are being detained because they broke a law. And we have to get clear on that. It is illegal to come into the United States without permission, without going through the procedures to become a citizen. You can't just make up your mind that, oh, I need to go feed my family. So you get to break the law and become some kind of a crusader. When right on the other hand, people have tried to break the law and have broken the law to feed their families, and it cost them their lives. It cost them their freedom. And this should be no different. If you're willing to break the law to feed your family, which is so unfortunate anyone should ever have to do that. But if it happens, you gotta, what they say, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. And once you cross that border, whatever on the negative side of what you were thinking about goes with that trip, goes with that. And the United States is deceiving itself to think that they're going to make the detention conditions for these illegal immigrants appear to be so much worse. You can't say anything about it being surrounded in the Everglades by alligators because the alligators are fenced and can't come into the facility. But if one of those detainees gets out, then it's on them. They're not supposed to be leaving until they're released. I don't hear anybody kicking about that. I know they want to say something about it being surrounded by alligators, but what would be your justification? Because some of the detainees might get bit. Yeah, because they might be on the other side of the fence. They might get bit. We need to not protect this, and we need to not pump this up and act like this is a bad thing when what is being described as deplorable conditions, it's what's going on. That's what jail is.
Site earlier today.
The conditions that we saw inside this internment camp, which it is nothing less than that description, were really appalling. These detainees are living in cages. The pictures that you've seen don't do it justice. They are essentially packed into cages, wall-to-wall humans, 32 detainees per cage.
And the cages that she's referring to are chain link fence. That's what she's calling the cage. And just like if you go to a huge facility, they use chain link fence to cordon off the inmates. And the crazy part about it is 30, 40, 50, 60 in a cage, as she calls it. And when you're in the on the right side of them, they call them dorms or cell blocks or whatever. But it's the same. No matter what material they use to fence you in, you're in a cage. You're confined. That's the purpose. And nobody is going to convince me that these people are being treated any worse than the regular prison inmates in the United States. What an average inmate would expect is probably about what these are getting, maybe a little better in some areas, maybe a little worse. But you expect us to feel so bad for these people that we say, let them out of there. Just let them go. Not me.
Again, this happening just a few moments ago after all of these lawmakers came out. Then earlier this week, Fred, I spoke with a Guatemalan woman whose husband is detained at Alligator, Alcatraz. Among other things, she told me her husband is enduring mosquitoes, unbearable heat and humidity, insufficient washing facilities, hard beds, and bad food. She also told me her husband was only able to take one shower in a 6-day period.
Well, I had the opportunity to stay at the LA County Jail without a reservation, so I know they weren't expecting me. And my treatment was similar to that. Several days without a shower. Then nobody even asking if they got to open this. So when you get out of there and go to another part of the LA County system, LA County is a dungeon down there. And I could not imagine where these people are being worse than that. It might be, but these are citizens of the United States that you're locking up in a dungeon. And now we got Congress folk and local politicians coming in to assess the conditions that the illegal immigrants are staying in and kicking hard about it. And when's the last time you seen them kicking hard about the state conditions in some of these facilities that are privately owned? You ever hear them kicking too much about that? They probably got money invested in it. They're probably pissed because they can't invest in this detention facility that they have set up for the illegal immigrants. So they're mad. They have to be. I don't know what else to say. Kind of disappointing, though, to see them snap to life and go fight. Do you see the contrast yet, folks? Do you see the difference? Do you see what they're putting right in your face and expecting you to support it? This is not supposed to happen like this. Not at all. They're not supposed to make guilt you and make you feel bad and shame you into going out and support somebody who's doing bad just like you're doing bad. You may not be in a position to help at all, but they'll make you feel like you are. At least you're a citizen. Well, what good is that lately?
And that he has not had access to an attorney so far. On Thursday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said people need to remember, he said, that Alligator Alcatraz is not a hotel. Let's take a listen.
It is a center to process illegal aliens and then to provide a pad to deport them from the runway that's right there. We did not create the Four Seasons. That's not the intent of this. All the standards are a lot higher than what was even required.
And Fred, in addition to the current heat.
And that's probably true. The standards are probably low. The requirement for prisons in general and jails in the United States are probably pretty bad. And if they're not, they're being violated because the conditions, the actual conditions are horrible. Now, they might be up to the standard and be passing inspections. If that's the case, then these folks are going to have to get used to living in those conditions until they get back on the right side of the border. Complaining about not being able to take a shower for 6-7 days. Aren't these the same people that we saw walking miles and miles and miles, hundreds of miles with backpacks and blankets all the way to get to the United States? Were there shower stops? Were there refreshment spots? Were there donut shops and places where you can get coffee? How did they do it then? Now they're in the United States where they wanted to be. They're being detained and processed to see if they're going to continue to stay in the United States or if they're going to be deported. And they're pissed. Do they have a right to be? What do you guys think? Well, drop me something in these comments and let me know, do they have the right to be pissed, honestly?
The humidity inside the tents and the abundance of mosquitoes. Immigrant rights groups also worry about the opening of a migrant detention center in the middle of a hurricane season. We were talking about it a couple of hours ago. One of the lawmakers said that's precisely the question he has. What's going to happen if there's a hurricane, if there's a powerful storm?
Right, because it's very early on, and usually that route is usually 2-lane in most places, in order to get to that location around the Everglades. And so it would be a difficult way to get out quickly.
Especially for 3,000 people. Yes.
All right. Thanks so much, Rafael. Appreciate it. All right. The opening of this controversial detention center in the Florida Everglades is bringing up painful reminders of detention camps from the past for some Americans, specifically Japanese American internment camps, which the U.S. government set up during World War II when the government forcibly relocated and incarcerated more than 100,000 people of Japanese descent. I'm joined now by John Osaki. He is the executive director of the Japanese Community Youth Center in San Francisco. John, good to see you.
Well, this is rare. You don't usually see them using Asians, and bringing up their pains and sorrows and wow. And using it as a parallel to what's going on with the illegal immigrant situation. Let's start off by saying these people were citizens of the United States and they were still put in internment camps. That's on the United States, not them. That ain't right. At all. At all. It's terrible. Then I start thinking, they're trying to make us believe that these are United States citizens in this internment camp and that this is an illegal and an unlawful and unconstitutional detention. And it's not. But I do believe they should set up a satellite court at that facility so it'll be a one-stop shop. You can pretty much be detained and have your resolution drawn right there on the same property. And, one bus going north and one bus going south, and then figure out which way you're going on that property. There's absolutely no reason for these people to expect round-trip airfare back home, 7-day, luxury stay at a wonderful hotel with great food, no mosquitoes. You're in the middle of the Everglades. That's what it is. Prisons are in horrible locations. Sometimes they're in the middle of the deserts. Sometimes they're in places that are very, very cold. But it is a prison. It is a facility to detain people. And it's not supposed to be luxurious. I'm sure they have air conditioning units where the staff frequent.
Thanks for having me.
So you're not alone in seeing these deep parallels between the so-called alligator Alcatraz and the targeting of Japanese Americans during World War II who were rounded up, incarcerated. You heard Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz just a moment ago, who is touring the facility there in the Everglades. So talk to me about the parallels you're seeing and how this is really, turning up some very disturbing emotions.
And there truly are some parallels, but the fact that the Japanese Americans were citizens of this country and got put in internment camp, is all you really need to know. The other parallels are they were all humans. They're all being put in a facility that they can't leave voluntarily. So there are some parallels. The United States is probably being racist to the illegal immigrants like they were being racist to the Japanese Americans. So there are some parallels, but we need to be realistic about it and not just use the lockup that the Japanese Americans had to go through in order to justify stopping this with illegal immigrants. We've seen enough. We don't want to see any more of this. Until you guys unlock the prisons in the United States and let some of those citizens out who deserve a better chance because they didn't have a good chance to begin with. They weren't walking on level ground or even slightly tilted ground. It was a slope that they almost had no other option but to slide down. Once the country accepts that, starts to try to redo some of that harm just on the basis of racism, the default of this country is racism. And if they're not willing to fix some of that stuff and they expect us to follow them around from cause to cause that really has an underlying benefit to them, they don't do anything. They don't donate anything unless there is a political image or a financial benefit. It has to be something that they're gaining, or they're not doing it. They're not in the business of doing that.
Well, in 1942, Japanese Americans were criminalized based solely on their race. And it is extremely disturbing for many in our community to see immigrants being criminalized. It has nothing to do with whether or not they have actually committed a crime. And there are many painful memories that are coming up for many in our community: the lack of due process, the fact that folks are being rounded up indiscriminately. And, our community has worked for decades to try to ensure that this shameful chapter in American history did not repeat itself.
I guess the black people wasn't really biting on the deportation talk because they were trying to scare the hell out of us and see if they're going to get us to participate in this. Oh, they're trying to take us out of here too. And they would think about it. They dream about it. They fantasize about it, but they know they can't do it. And right now, for this guy to be up here, it's nice for them to revisit that tragedy and to make sure that we don't repeat it. But we're not at risk of repeating it right now because we don't have citizens from the United States citizens in those detention facilities. And if one or two has gotten accidentally picked up, it's just more of a testament as to why we can't open our borders up, because it opens up our regular citizens to scrutiny and being checked and looked at. And that's a horrible thing. They don't deserve that. They deserve to move about the country freely and not being mistaken for an illegal immigrant, because it is a possibility, because millions and millions and millions were let in.
And so it is horrifying for many of us to see that that is exactly what is happening.
And then tell me, too, how in many Japanese American households, these scars are deep. The trauma is still felt, from World War II. And to only hear about what is happening now just seems to stir up some of those same feelings.
Well, my mother and father were both incarcerated during World War II, and they had never been to Japan. They had no connection to the Japanese imperial military, and their only crime was being Japanese at that time. And I think what is so disturbing to so many of us in our community is the fact that there are no charges being leveled other than people being immigrants in this case.
Illegal immigrants. And that's where we have that disconnect once again, you guys. You got to listen to these people when they're talking to you, because they'll skip right over the fact that they're illegal immigrants and tell you that the same thing that's happening to them happened to the Japanese Americans at the end of World War II or during World War II. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. These people are illegal immigrants. These people are standing on United States soil illegally against the rules and the laws of the country and the Constitution. So when they try to miss parts and tell you, and you sit there and think, well, gee, why are they like they're here illegally? That's it. And that's makes sense to process them in some way. We have to come to a resolution. We absolutely have to come to a resolution. We cannot continue like this. It's making all the other minorities in the country that you've been neglecting feel kind of jealous.
There is no due process for them. That's what happened to many of the individuals in our community who had no trials. There had no charges at the time. And in fact, it came out later that the government actually lied about why it was necessary to incarcerate Japanese Americans in the first place. And the rationale put in place at that time to incarcerate our entire community were really based on false narratives.
And that's absolutely true. But you're insinuating that the reason these illegal immigrants are being locked up is based on a false narrative. It's not. They're here illegally. I don't like when our mainstream news gets on here and tries to manipulate us into supporting things that maybe if we had the facts given to us straight, maybe we wouldn't support, which is cool. You don't have to support it. You don't have to support it at all. But it's not their place to garner support with this kind of trickery.
And ultimately, it was about a political agenda. And I think that is very much what we are seeing playing out today.
And John, a moment ago, we just saw a black and white picture of a young man. That, I'm told, was your dad. How old was your dad at that time?
Yeah, they're going into the whole thing. So he's going to get a little choked up because you just showed a picture of his damn dad who was locked up in an internment camp. And something happened to their race of people and something happened in their history here in the United States. And it should be talked about and remembered and gone over on its own merit, not in comparison to something that's going on today that is not parallel to it. It's different. It's got some major differences. And at the gate, it on its face, right in the beginning, it has some serious issues. And that's the problem. They still want to force that square peg into that round hole anyway and expect you to just accept it. But we need to stop accepting it. That's why we see all these people out there supporting an action that they really don't understand. They don't really understand the full circle implications of. A lot of people say, I'm not competing with the illegal immigrants. Well, in a lot of ways you are. That's the downside of it. And we don't even know it. It's pretty bad, though, when you realize how good they are at their messaging, at their disinformation, at their propaganda. It's really dangerous. You have to read and listen with a discriminating ear to make sure that you didn't think you heard and everybody else is going, that ain't what they said. But in most cases, the masses are hearing something different than the person who with the discriminating ear, the person who pushes the envelope a little further to make sure that this story isn't just breaking on this news network, that this story is being told consistently all the way around. And even that ain't good enough this day. In this day, that's not good enough. But at least you can understand what level this lie has formed from. In most cases, if you find out after 4, 5, 6 sources line up, but it's still a lie, that means that this lie came from a higher source. The lower source lies, you might just hear from a couple of wingnut outlets, but it's sad that we have to be so on top of the news that we digest, the information that is laying around for our children to consume, to get a hold of, to read. And some of our adults are not doing a good job at deciphering some of this information and understanding that if it takes you away from your fight, from your opportunity to progress, then it might not be for you. It might not be a movement that's going to do you any good. So it would be a movement for you to move yourself out of. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you on the next Black Popcorn.